Efutun semena agriculture unti ya so. Yadiabo agriculture semuno yadiabo AKUAFO semuno yadiabo.
AKUAFO TV Agricultural Channel.
Sure, my name is Jocelyn Brown Hall. I'm the Deputy Regional Representative for FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations Bureau in Africa, and I'm also the officer in charge for the Ghana Country Office here in Accra, Ghana. Well, this is a very exciting program that combines addressing 4 specific issues. One issue is around climate change. Another issue is around innovation and processing of food, especially for the third issue of women who are deeply involved in agriculture, and women, the fourth issue, who live in the rural areas. Absolutely. Women are the underpinning, the force behind agriculture, both productivity and processing here in Ghana. As we know, over 60%, even 70% of women in Ghana do the agricultural work. And we want to make sure that when they do the work, they get fair pay for what they're doing and that they can see value from what they're doing. So we want to create processing and packaging opportunities for them to help them gain more value out of the agricultural productivity, but we also want to make sure that the processing and the packaging technologies do not hurt the climate, because as we all know, climate change is here, weather conditions are changing, and that's changing how we do agriculture and how we make agriculture productivity sustainable for future generations. We have presenters and innovators here from all parts of not only Ghana and not only the research community, but actual entrepreneurs and throughout Sub-Saharan Africa. We just heard of a female entrepreneur who's working in the rural areas on turning coconut husks into soils that are just as productive as regular soil. And we'll hear from other women entrepreneurs about processing of cassava, about processing of cocoa pods, and other fruits and vegetables so that they can gain value from what they're doing in agriculture and also preserve the environment and bring economic development to rural communities. Well, I'm just excited to be here, and I'm excited that the government of Ghana has taken this incredibly forward-looking idea. I'm proud to be part of with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. I give great credit to the Council on Scientific and Industrial Research Centers, and also to all the entrepreneurs and researchers here who are working together to support women entrepreneurs and food processing and packaging to reduce food loss and waste, and to stem climate change. So it's an exciting event. Thank you.
What to do with this presentation is just give you some basics and hopefully draw your attention to some issues that you probably haven't thought of, so that you appreciate what we talk about when we say climate change and climate variability. So as he said, I'm from the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability at the University of Ghana, where apart from doing research and dissemination of issues on climate change and sustainability, we also teach graduate students. Currently we have MPhil elementary students that we teach on climate change. So I'll look at these key issues in my presentation this morning, which will be key terminologies that I think are important to enhance your understanding. Then I'll also look at evidence, analysis of the causes of climate change, more emphasis on human-driven causes. Then I'll also just provide 1 or 2 slides on the scientific consensus. There's never been any issue in the world ever that you had so much consensus, but yet still there are a lot of deniers in the system. Then I also look at some of the risk and effects of climate change generally, and then I also end with the opportunities for adaptation, which even from the earlier remarks again, I realized that there's a lot that people are doing already to help deal with climate change as a global threat. So as part of the terminologies I think it's important for us to understand what weather is and what climate is. Our whole life as human beings and also as even animals are built around the climate. The condition of the climate is what sustains us or what drives us to take action. And so when we talk about weather, so for instance, weather is an everyday thing. So anytime we wake up and decide to go outside and wherever you find ourselves, the nature of the environment is what the weather is. It could be raining, it could be snowing, the sun could be shining. Within a split second, you could have the sunshine, then within another second, you have rainfall or very humid heat. So that is weather, rapidly changing on just regular daily basis. When we talk about climate, when you hear of climate, anytime you hear of climate, the most important thing to think about is the fact that climate is an observation of the atmospheric behavior for a longer period. So like maybe 10 years to 100 years, where we see that all of a sudden the conditions in this area, let's say in this particular area, for example, we have almost rain every day, but that was not the original, so that is a climatic condition, and then every day of rain. So basically, that is one of the very simple definitions. We only talk about climate when we want to put together all the weather phenomena for a long time and see that it's become the norm. So one of the earlier speakers said that, we are currently experiencing a lot of rain in October. Typically, that's not the case for Ghana, but it's happening. So we have to observe it for a longer period of time. And we said, okay, this is now the climatic condition in this part of the country. So it needs time. That's just for information. There's another word that comes up a lot. Those of you who read or who come across, this sort of area of research. The word we call it greenhouse gas. So, the Earth is part of the bigger solar system or atmosphere that we look at. And we are surrounded by gases. It's just gases that are surrounding us. As we say, there are different kinds of gases out here. Of course, we don't see them, but the gases contribute to the weather conditions that we experience. There's what we call the greenhouse gas. And so these are gases that absorb what we call infrared radiation, short-wave, long-wave. Radiations are, all kinds of heat systems that are within us that works as we sit here. So, for example, carbon dioxide is one very good example of what we call a greenhouse gas. If you think of a greenhouse as, for example, most of the labs, agricultural, labs that we have around, they have an area where it is contained, where they trap heat, and the heat is used by the plant within the space just so that they can survive in that environment. Methane is also one important form of greenhouse gas, which are also generated through human as well as natural activities. Nitrous oxide, chlorofluorocarbon. So one of the most useful forms of chlorofluorocarbon, which is what we call the CFCs, was coming from fridges. Fridges, for instance, but after the Montreal Protocol, there was a change in the way fridges are produced, so now we don't have CFCs through fridges. These are all gases, just so that you understand. There's also the concept of what we call climate variability. What is that? So if you see climate variability and climate change, they're not the same. I already talked about what climate is. But climate variability is just, if you look at changes in a condition year to year, you don't get what you expect. So that gives you an impression that, okay, this is variable. After all, when you look at the farmers all over the country, they know that around September or maybe August it will rain around this month. But all of a sudden it changes, so it's variable. On the other hand, climate change is a change over a period of time, like I said. When we have all the variabilities for a long time, then we will have what we call the climate change. And then there's what we call the greenhouse effect. What is a greenhouse effect? The greenhouse effect is a very important natural system that helps to regulate the climate that we have on the Earth, as well as maybe other planets that we have. But what it basically does is that it's a system that allows for gases to freely move from the atmosphere. We have different layers of the atmosphere. So if the sun shines, for instance, it comes down, it hits the Earth, and through a system of different layers of gases surrounding, and some of it is sustained on the Earth, some of them also goes back into the atmosphere. That is the natural system that works. It's been working ever since the Earth has been in being. But over the years, there's what we call enhanced greenhouse. So in all nature's own way, it's working all right, but through the production of different kinds of gases, the greenhouse gases that I talked about earlier on, that system that used to be natural, that allows, that regular normal temperature has changed because humans over the years now have produced artificial versions of these gases, carbon, methane, nitrous oxide, even water vapor, through their different activities. Of course, we started with the Industrial Revolution, whereby we have a lot of factories producing fuels, to our daily activities such as even the food that we throw away, the food waste I go here. That is also a major contributor to greenhouse gases methane. Do you know that anytime you throw your food away and you leave that food there, it also decomposes and contributes to greenhouse gas emissions? That is methane for you. And that's also contributing to climate change. So the whole discussion is that this natural process has been enhanced, and that is also generating problems for the ability of the climate to work as it's supposed to be. There's also what we call global warming. So as a result of this current scenario that we have here, we are saying that the globe is warming, and I'm sure many of you have had a chance to look at or seen or read something about global warming, and it's actually the defining characteristics of climate change. It's what defines it, because many parts of the world are having heat or that has never been seen before on the Earth's surface. So there's global warming, and it's manifested in different ways across the world, and that obviously has impact on plants, because plants, including animal species as well, need certain conditions to survive. So while there's warming, they have to find ways to. So that is a major challenge for humans as well as plants and as worldwide life. There's also the concept of mitigation and adaptation, which is critical. The whole discussion about finding solutions to climate change revolves around, are we going to mitigate? Are we going to adapt? And obviously, when we talk about mitigating, they say that at least now we understand what greenhouse gases are. We need to find a way to reduce the amount of emissions that we are sending across. Regardless of what we do now, we produce so much of carbon to the point that we'll never have the condition that existed before when the humans put a lot of carbon to that. So we need to now find ways to reduce it. Otherwise, we get to a point whereby the change will be so drastic that we can't do anything about it. So we're trying to reduce greenhouse gases in order to slow or stop climate change. And then we also have adaptation, which basically says that, okay, we acknowledge that we've changed the nature of the climate, so we have to adapt. And in many parts of the world, people are finding ways to adapt. If you go to parts of the US or in many areas in the country, in Ghana, you can't help it. The rains will come. So how do you build in such a way that you don't get taken away when it rains heavily? This is what we do. So basically, adaptation is adjusting to the impact of climate change so that at least you reduce the negative impact that it will have on your life. Those are two key words to have in mind. So how do we really know that climate change isn't just a make-up story or something that people are just using it as a way to enrich themselves? And like I said earlier on, there's never been any sort of research or issue globally ever that we've had so much evidence of the fact that it's happening. Because the evidence is both, practical as well as scientific. So I'll just highlight a few points to let you know. Again, you all know what carbon is and how it contributes to the atmosphere. So basically, the carbon concentration that we've had in the Earth's atmosphere is alarming. And that is one of the key drivers of climate change as we talk about. So if you go to any UN conference, any global workshop or talk show, carbon is talked about every second, almost every second. It's actually one of the most widely used words that you can think about. So if you look at this graph, for instance, which is, so you may not see here, but it's dating back to maybe more than 500 years ago. Of course, one has a question, who was able to measure then? But scientists are able to rely on fossil records to tell of the amount of carbon that existed within the Earth. Because the whole Earth, or whatever that we had, the fossils are all carbon emissions. So it tells you that for a period of time, there was some stability. But if you look at this period there, for instance, and these are the parts per million, amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So this area said, less than 200, 100, which is fine, regular. But all of a sudden, from here, this is from 1900 or 1800 right here, it starts shooting up here. And it gets to a point whereby, if you look at it right, there's another version of it, which is from 1915. The data hasn't been recorded, so there's a place in Hawaii in the US called Mauna Loa, where a scientist called Csir started recording carbon in the atmosphere for a long period of time, between the 50s, and they still record it up to today. So that data clearly shows a very rapid increase in carbon emissions in the atmosphere. That is, every time there's a recording, it shows the increase, and that is one key evidence of why the climate is changing. And then everyday issue, global temperature rise. Who hasn't heard about, every year there's probably a story about heat wave in Europe. There's stories about heat wave because basically the temperature levels are way beyond what is expected or what we've had. So if you look at the planet's average surface temperature, according to the data that has been collected for a long time, it's increased by 1.6 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 0.9 degrees Celsius. This is a small increase, but this increase is actually extremely worrying because of what it does to different elements, apart from humans, what it does to plants and others. So this data also here, which you find around, shows clearly the increase that we are seeing now. And again, in the last 10 years, if you look at recordings of global temperature levels, the data every year shows, that we've already received the hottest, recorded years on the planet for maybe the last 16 years. So that is data that's available all over the world. There's also the issue of what we call warming oceans. And actually, so with all the heat that is being sent down here, and with all the breakage in the ability of the atmosphere or with the ozone to collect the heat, all of it goes into the ocean. The ocean is the one that is now taking all the heat because other forms of sequestration are not there. So the ocean is actually one of the most important sequesters of all the warmth that we are receiving. But now, it's also because of the magnitude of it, it is also causing ocean species or marine species to also begin to react. And so these beautiful creatures here, what we call the coral reefs, are all dying all over the world. And this, actually, there's also a lot of evidence all over. If you go to YouTube and look for evidence of how, coral reefs are declining, especially the Great Barrier Reef, they are there. And these are recordings that people have actually done for like 60 years. These are not like just a few days ago thing. People have done it for like 60 years and the evidence shows the decline. We can also talk about shrinking ice sheet. Again, if you're following the news, more recently in Iceland, one of the ice that has been around for so long, over 200 years, just got melted totally. It's lost to the ocean. What happens with all that comes in the form of water, and that also has implications on many countries because more water in the ocean means that clearly the sea levels will rise, and these are things that are also being recorded. The melting ice caps are also another group of evidence on the case that I'm looking at. So this is, so you see the video, the photo at the background here, this is Kilimanjaro. And those of you who are coming from that side of Africa, I'm sure there's a lot of local knowledge or local stories around the Kilimanjaro and how the fall or the loss of ice on the Kilimanjaro is impacting not just the people around the area, but people even within the broader, Eastern African region. So it's also a very good evidence of heat, global warming impacting on that. Sea level rise, almost all the islands in the Caribbean, or what we call the small island developing states. So there's over 50-something small island developing states in the world. And all these islands are threatened. So for instance, Marshall Islands, Toru, those islands around Australia, already they've lost their homes. Many people have lost their homes because of sea level rise. And these are all evidence, not just the rain, but also coming from different areas. There's also the declining Arctic sea ice in the northern hemisphere, which obviously also will mean that all ends up in the form of water. Extreme weather events. Again, I want to find out from you, most of you here probably have become victims, or maybe your relatives or people from all over the world are victims of extreme weather events. So I took this photo online from the cyclone in Mozambique, Ida, and this is some of the impact that came about. What are the causes of climate change? Again, I talked about this already. I don't want to go deeper again, but the human element is what we are talking about. Human beings contributing in different ways through activities of about 200, 300 years is something that has contributed to the current change in climate. So I already highlighted that. I talked about the rise in greenhouse gases, carbon, methane. These are all things that are relevant. And then when you talk about what do the scientists say, all over the world, scientists talk about the impact. So if you go to recordings of temperature all over the world by the biggest meteorological agencies, we can think about NASA, the Broad Institute, all the values that they have over the years shows that there's not a single major one that doesn't show increase. So then in Japan as well, the meteorological evidence shows the rise in temperatures all over the world in the last 100 or 60 years across. So that is an evidence. And even within academia as well, from the work that we do, our interactions with people from local communities, they tell you about how they're feeling the change. And the research across different parts of the world shows that scientists hardly agree, as we know, but then a lot of evidence shows that there's that increase. So if you think about effects, everybody is a victim here of climate change. You can say they're linked to climate change, but the point of it is that in different ways, the indicators will catch up with you in different ways that you look at it. So, and the evidence is there, the science is there to show that. So, I just want to highlight a few things. So, if you look at the cost of climate-related disasters for businesses, this data that I found on statistics show that, in 1978 and 1997, we had about 895 million. And then between 1998 and 2017, about 2.25 trillion. In the health sector, climate change impacts in different ways. If temperatures are rising, it obviously have impact on different kinds of heat-related illnesses. Heart issues are likely to intensify. You can look at, sea level rise also impacting on areas of the coastal community where they will have severe issues. In agricultural sector, the impact is enormous. Flooding already is destroying many crops in many parts of the country. For instance, the agri-wear migration is also one that is talked about a lot across the country, in Ghana now. Because it's not a new thing, but if you look at the direction of it, the intensity of it, it's something that obviously driven by changing climate as well. Then in Ghana generally, if you look at Ghana in this context, you will see that different parts of the country will have different kinds of impacts. And this is something for you to appreciate, that wherever you live, you're likely to be impacted because of different elements that are taking place. I will, this will be shared with you later, so you can still appreciate some of the issues that I'm talking about. This is also a case in northern Ghana, especially, how people are impacted across different regions. When it comes to opportunities for adaptation, I think one of the key things that I want you to appreciate or have in mind is that there's always the idea of what we call the take, make, dispose system. We have so many things that are wasted in their homes. We need to move away from that to a more of what we call a circular economy, whereby everything goes back into a system and is being used, like what earlier speakers spoke about, a very important angle. There's also a lot of already existing strategies, and that's already aside that there's already innovations happening all over the country, not just in Ghana, but also from what I've seen from the outlet, from our presenters who talk about their innovations in their countries to share with us. So I think that I'll end here. I don't have my time, but there will be time for questions and answering if there's anything, I will do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think very interesting presentation. What the Analysis Committee, I think what we'll do is we'll make these things available. You can make these things available to the participants. But this one is key, so we'll make it available to them. But let's have the next presentation. At the end of this session, you can ask a few questions. But this one is very, it's the heart of the whole issue. That's why I give you a little more time. So the next presentation is on sustainable development, climate change, food processing, the rural woman, the perspectives in Ghana. This is by Dr. Rose. It's also from the CSI, the Council for Scientific Research. It's from the Science Technology Policy Research.
Good morning. Yeah, so I'll be talking briefly about the Sustainable Development Goals, talk about the impact of climate change on food, on the food systems, and then I'll talk about some policies, programs, and projects that we have in Ghana, and specifically talk about the impact of research in addressing the impact of climate change. So I'm from the Science and Technology Policy Research Institute of the CSIR. So in terms of nutrition and agriculture and food issues, we have a global goal that we all aim to attain. And that goal is to end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture by 2030. And this is Sustainable Development Goal 2. And within the African continent, we also have the Malabo commitments that African governments actually committed to end hunger by 2025. And within this commitment, we have some targets. One of them is to increase access to agricultural inputs and technology, to increase agricultural productivity, to reduce post-harvest losses, and increase food and nutrition security. So you all know that if climate change, from what the previous presenter presented, if we have all these things going on, it will definitely impact on food production. And from the previous presenter, we know that climate change is characterized by water scarcity, long periods of drought, too much rain when we don't expect rain, and flooding and all those things, which actually impact agricultural productivity. It increases food safety hazards, high temperature, more microbes, molds, all those affecting the quality and safety of our foods. And also it increases post-harvest losses. Then, so it's obvious that we cannot achieve the SDG 2 and the Malabo Commitment 3 if we have climate change affecting us. So we must do something to address it. And now we are all saying that there is no food security without food safety. So we cannot leave our food to be affected by the impact of climate without doing anything about it. And we can see that the food security or food safety itself is integral to the attainment of SDG Goal 3, which is good health and well-being. And the same food safety is significant or has a significant influence on a number of SDGs: clean water and sanitation, no poverty, zero hunger. All these things have a great or are influenced by food safety. Now, so within Ghana, we have some policies, programs, and projects. I just mentioned a few of them. One of them is the Ghana National Climate Change Policy. And within this policy, one of the things that the policy seeks to achieve is to develop climate resilience agricultural and food systems. So everything has to be based on climate smart research. We need to develop a number of crop production systems, livestock systems, food processing systems, and all that are climate smart. Then we also have the National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy. And within this strategy, we have 10 programs. 3 of them, I just highlighted them here, are so much focused on climate smart activities. One of them is research and awareness creation. The other one is to even enhance fisheries, resource management, and all that using climate smart approaches. Then we also have a project or a program called the Modernizing Agriculture in Ghana. And this MAG project has a number of outcomes. One of them is to ensure or promote climate smart agriculture and aquaculture through adaptive research and demonstration. So clearly, research has a role to play if we really have to achieve something in terms of climate smart approaches. So what has research been doing? A number of things. So you see that over the past 2 decades, the CSI and other public research institutions have been doing a lot in terms of coming up with new agricultural technologies. So they have produced or developed about 270 technologies. We have 119 focused on improved crop varieties, and a whole lot of them agronomic practices, pest and disease management, food processing, even food engineering and all that. So we are doing a lot in terms of technologies. So specifically talking about crop varieties, CSR and other research institutions have come up with drought-tolerant varieties, especially for the northern part where we don't have enough rain. They have come up with varieties that are widely adapted to the number of or several kind of climatic conditions. They can grow almost everywhere in the country. And then when it comes to animal husbandry, the Animal Research Institute, for example, has come up with a technology where they grow or they develop plantation or forage for animals to graze instead of they going around looking for plants to graze, especially in the dry season. So they have come up with this technology so that they can always have plants for them to graze on. We have technologies to address our water scarcity problems. We have standardized rain harvesting technology. And even in terms of fisheries, we have the improved Nile tilapia technology that improves aquaculture. Then in terms of food processing, a lot has been done. We were talking about when we expect rain or when we don't expect rain, it is raining. So when you want to produce cassava flour, for example, and you are drying, you are sun drying your products, and it is raining, you can imagine what will happen. So with technology, we now have improved solar dryer systems. We have improved mechanical dryers that can enable you even process your cassava flour within a day. You don't have to depend on the sun, you know, to be having effects of rain and all that. Then they have also come up with a parboiling vessel in the northern Ghana where we have extreme temperatures because of maybe lack of equipment to harvest on time and all that. They leave the rice on the farm for so long. So during milling, they tend to have a lot of broken grains because the rice over dries. Let me put it that the moisture content is so low. So because of that, they use parboiling technology to reduce the breakage. So, and this technology is very drudgery. It uses a lot of firewood. So with technology now, the parboiling vessel has been able to reduce the amount of wood they have to use. So it means that we have more trees in our forest. It has reduced the amount of water they have to use. So we have more water in our rivers. And then when it comes to aflatoxin control, I talk about the effects of a high temperature leading to more mold growth and all that. So once you have the mold growing and you have aflatoxin being produced, it means that your produce is no more safe for consumption. So we have a number of technologies. Nixtamalization is now being promoted by the Mexican embassy. I know they are doing some research with UDS, and I know they are looking for more partners so that they can do more research how this nixtamalization technology can be applied in Ghana. We have the AFLA-safe technology that has been developed, which actually outcompetes with the aspergillus that produces the aflatoxin. Then we have solar dryers, mechanical dryers that can enable us to dry our grains quickly so that they don't get moldy. So these are just a few of the technologies that we have in Ghana here that is helping us. Now, it is not only having the technologies, we need to get them to the women who need them. And that is why we have a very big challenge. We have done well, but because most of these things are project-based, as soon as the project ends, then scaling up becomes a problem. So I'll conclude by saying that climate change impacts the attainment of SDG 2 and Malabo Declaration Commitment 3. And we have a number of policies, good policies, programs, and projects being implemented now in Ghana. And research has also contributed by coming up with technologies that can address all these problems. But there is a need for us to improve our extension system so that these technologies will not only remain with us or will not die with the end of projects, but will continue to live with us for our women, rural women in particular, to use these technologies for their benefit and to improve their livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the previous presentations, we all have come to agree to the fact that climate change is real. And almost all the presentations have touched on the impacts of climate change on agriculture. So as the Minister of Food and Agriculture, who is responsible for ensuring that there is enough food in Ghana so that we don't go hungry. What have we done so far? I will look at the presentation and follow this outline. Also refer to the National Climate Change Policy, which led to the development of the Climate Smart Agriculture and Food Security Action Plan, and we'll look at the projects that the ministry has implemented but passed, and then the ones that are ongoing, all in response to climate change. So, the government of Ghana did not see climate change as one of the common issues, but because of its cross-cutting nature, saw it as a developmental issue, and therefore fashioned to tackle this holistically. More often than not, you meet people and they ask you, what is the agriculture policy on climate change? And I tell them it is not necessary, because climate change doesn't affect only agriculture, and agriculture has links with other sectors, and therefore we need to tackle it holistically, and that is the approach that government of Ghana used. So in 2013, the National Climate Change Policy was completed. The policy had 5 thematic areas. The first one being agriculture and food security, second one being the disaster preparedness and response, natural resource management, equitable social development, energy, industrial and infrastructure development. So this is a printed version of the policy document. And then the policy provided a broad framework for specific sector strategies. And therefore, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture picked the food security and agriculture thematic area, and then developed the National Climate Smart Agriculture and Food Security Action Plan to be implemented between 2016 and 2020. So from the broad policy framework, we go to specific sector strategy, and the other sectors are also following same, developing their strategies to implement the actions. What are the goals and objectives? The goals are to effectively integrate climate change in food and agriculture sector development policies and strategies. And we have 3 objectives. 1, to develop climate resilient agriculture and food systems for all agroecological zones. Ghana has 6 gazetted agroecological zones. And because of the differentiated impacts of climate change on each zone, we need to tackle them separately. Second objective is to develop human resource capacity for climate resilient agriculture. The previous presenter said we need to integrate all these ones into our extension system, and that is being addressed by the strategy. And then we also have to elaborate on the implementation framework, and then specific climate smart activities for the governance levels. The national level have their issues that has to do with strategies, policies, and programs. The sub-national levels, they also have their issues. And if you go to the agroecological zones, each eco zone is specific, and their issues are different, and therefore we need to elaborate on these ones as well, and that is what the strategy seeks to do. So, what are the program areas in the CSA action plan? You'll find the same thing in the National Climate Change Policy. We have 8 program areas. It has to do with capacity development and research, promotion of climate resilient cropping systems. We have programs in the livestock systems, fisheries as well, water conservation and irrigation, risk transfer and alternative livelihoods. And then post-harvest management, which I believe this conference squarely fits in, and then improved marketing systems. When these program areas were identified, because of the differentiated impacts, there was a need to organize stakeholder consultations at the various ecological zones so that those differences could now feed into the specific activities that will be rolled out in each of these ecological zones. So this workshop was was done across the ecological zones, and that informed the activities or the broad activity areas that you find in the strategy documents. So, with that what has the ministry done so far on the ground, and what is it doing currently also on the ground? We, during the 2012-2016 period, with the support of the GIZ, we implemented the adaptation of agro-ecosystems to climate change projects. And this was implemented in collaboration with NGOs, the districts and the regional departments of agriculture, and then the research. It was implemented in the Northern Savannah Zone. So we had the Csir playing a major role in this one, and then the research findings were also disseminated by Agri-Extension, Department of Agriculture, and NGOs. The objective of that project was to reduce climate-related yield losses for farmers, and then incorporate whatever results that we achieve into policies and programs. The second project was also FAO-TCP, which was on resilient livelihoods, improving access to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, good practices, and financial services for risk reduction. You can see from this project that, or almost all the project, that you can't talk about climate response without looking at alternatives, alternative livelihoods, financial resources, and all these other things. So that is the approach that the ministry is using. We are looking at holistic interventions instead of the piecemeal. So some of the field activities that were implemented, the normal introducing new crop varieties, and then we also realized that when it comes to use of improved seeds, it was a challenge in the communities. And therefore, we tried piloting community seed systems, where we introduced lead farmers to the use of foundation seeds to produce seeds so that they could sell within their communities and then increase improved seed success within the various communities. We also had another project, transition towards climate smart agriculture food systems. It was also a TCP, but it was a regional program for ECOWAS region. And apart from the field activities that were developed, we also developed this book, Investment Framework for Mobilization of Resources into Climate Smart Agriculture in Ghana. And this, we identified a district in each of the ecological zones, at least one district, and used that one to frame this document, which will guide the districts and then the regions to be able to develop programs and projects that will attract funding directly to the districts for their climate smart agriculture activities. They don't always have to wait for the national office to develop programs and bring them on board. But for them, we have identified the value chains, opportunities in CSA that exist within their localities. So that we take this document and then develop programs and projects and implement source funding direct into their districts and then implement the projects there. Yes, one presenter mentioned the WAP. And under the WAP, we also had a climate change component. And what we did was that we tried to establish climate smart, district level climate smart agriculture platforms to bring on board stakeholders in agriculture to discuss the issues of climate smart agriculture and ensure that they influence the development plans, agriculture development plans of the various districts assemblies for them to incorporate CSA interventions into their planning. We also, through that, established climate smart agriculture villages to showcase CSA technologies, and then we established CSA demonstration plots also in these districts. Under the root and tuber improvement and marketing program, there was one climate change component that sought to look at converting waste to energy. Apart from enhancing the production and productivity of root and tuber crops, we also, through that program, established a gasification plant in AKUAFO that is functioning now, where the cassava peels that are generated are improved leguminous species. So this, for example, is when they harvested and they were air drying or drying to feed during the dry season. And this is a rangeland, a 30 hectare in one of the communities. So far we have 6 of them developed. We have oversown all of them with the stylosanthus. And then we're also harvesting water through mini dams and then dugouts. And this is not under the One Village One Bank, but it is responding to that. It's under sustainable land and water management. In the agricultural landscapes, yes, we have constructed, I think, 5 of this one, and we are protecting them with vetiver grass so that it doesn't cave in. The Ghana Agriculture Sector Investment Program is also being implemented. Under the Value Chain Development component, there is a climate change resilient sub-program, and these are the focus areas of that project. And this is the field activities. Let me run through and then, let me conclude first. Prof, let me conclude. Otherwise, where are we? Yes. The Ministry of Food and Agriculture continues to undertake strategic actions towards addressing climate change impacts in the agricultural sector. And these strategic actions have been implemented at different governance levels. And when we are targeting the vulnerable landscapes or ecologies, we have implemented this in collaboration with partners, which includes research, development partners, and others. And then we'll continue doing this as we move on into the future. On that note, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. AKUAFO. So we'll have a last presentation for this session. And already we are 1 hour behind schedule. So this is by Ms. Corona. And she's the director of Women in Agricultural Development of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. So she has been working with food research institutes with that organization. So she will address some challenges with value addition to agriculture.
Yes, so for Rural Women's Day, the theme is linked to climate change, and we've heard a lot about climate change. But what is the key role of the rural woman? So for the outline, I would want to look at the context within which I'll be talking. I've hinted about the International Day for the Rural Woman, and within the agricultural space, the rural woman plays a key role, putting food on the table, right through from the rural setting to the urban area. And they contribute immensely to the general agricultural development. Value addition, yes, to agricultural produce. First is to reduce the post-harvest losses and improve on food security and nutrition. We add value to promote diversity, and for value-added products, I would want to assure us that there's a high demand for value-added products within the urban settings and beyond our shores. And efforts of government to empower women, I would say, has gone immensely on its own and in collaboration with the bilateral and other agencies. I want to show this slide. There hasn't been any study to update it. It's way 2013, and this is from the AGI and then also our statistics unit in MOFA. And we have these percentages of losses. And when we look at the fruits and vegetables, that's 38, almost 40. And that is huge. And that is where we derive a lot of our nourishment. But we leave all these things to waste. In addition to the others, if we are wasting food to such an extent, it means we are not thinking climate smart. Yes, this is just some theory about value addition, we all know. But I want us to focus on the simple to the complex systems of value addition. And I have a few photos to share. You can add value to agricultural produce by just sorting and improved packaging. We can add value to agricultural produce by proper drying, or even with simple systems. I always say that pepper is a commodity that can withstand village level technology. Once we can blanch and dry, but not drying on the floor or by the roadsides, but small investment items with which we can improve on the quality of pepper. These are all elements of value addition. For now, we have dealt with food research, and we have the communal facility dryer, which benefits some communities. You walk in to dry, and it has a fiber roof, roofing, fiber glass roofing, yes. And that is something we want to promote to a large scale. Yes, this is pineapple. We have this ladies science technology learning from our lab, and then going on to the drying of fruits. There's a lady here who is into fruit drying, and these are the high-end products, because if you have to dry, it has to be properly done. And then the supermarkets are also coming in with value-added vegetables, ready to eat, cut vegetables, you know, these convenient forms. And these are all welcome, because in the urban space, there's no time. And this is an opportunity we can cash into. And then we look at some village level things that are coming up. We see them in the urban settings, and we see them in our rural locations. There are aggregators who go all the way to distribute ingredients to most of our restaurants. They pick from the urban markets, they pick from the rural markets. And these are just market services, we call them, because the vegetables will have to be cut ready for the pot, but are they properly sanitized? So these are the issues we have to tackle. And as for fish, we've come a long way. Fish now is on ice, especially for the tilapia, and it's already been gutted. Yes, so we've come a long way, but these are things which bring revenue to our women, and how can we improve on these services so safer food can be provided to those consumers downstream. So now I would want us to look at this slide, because that is the main task for which I have to do this presentation. And for the rural woman, energy costs is one of the biggest challenge. We want to produce high quality cassava flour. We cannot play around with sun drying. It won't give us the quality we need. We have to invest in gas or electricity, and it does not come cheap. We are trying very hard to incorporate high quality cassava flour for bread and pastry making. But if you look at the cost of energy to drive water from cassava, we have to work on that very well. Otherwise, we won't go far. And then water for processing. It has to be potable water, or even at the village level, it has to be safe water for food processing. Labor is not coming in cheap. There are areas on Fridays you want people to help you, won't find them. They are going for their funerals. And then there are other competing activities that will not give you the labor required for agriculture-related activities. And these are all cost areas for the rural woman. And then quality equipment. For food processing, we all gun for stainless steel equipment. It does not come cheap. The government has subsidized agricultural inputs to a large extent, but we are not so much at ease with the stainless steel because it has other uses. So there's a big question mark on that. For what is produced locally, it does not come cheap. Mild steel is also an option, but we wish for food processing, we'll get the food grade equipment so consumers will have quality food. And then cost for analysis. You pick a food product and the labeling is food as is. So we use the raw material or the data for the raw food. When it is processed, how many can afford to do the analysis to give us the right information on the label? It is a big challenge. And even the process is also very cumbersome for someone who is not closer to the point for analysis. Packaging material, we have a lot of them. Some good, some also not too good, because we have fabricators who would want to cash in and they just want to put anything out there. But you have to see to good packaging material for food. And then the issue of irregular supply of the raw material is also another area for the rural woman. Yes. We have safety issues, the water quality, and then effluent, waste disposal, that's the liquid, and even solid waste disposal. Where you cannot recycle, it becomes a problem. Around some cassava processing units, you find mountains of the peels, nobody is coming for them, and it's really a problem. The previous speaker talked about the use of cassava peel to produce energy for gari roasting. That is one, but if we can replicate this, I think it will go a long way. We also have issues with the health and hygiene of those working in these processing facilities, and then holding and the processing units as well. Certification processes, and we think we have to have categories. If we have our FDA people here, we keep appealing and appealing and appealing. If we can have categories so that when they come to our facility, they will not be looking towards the high end, but we should have grades. So if a rural processor is operating, we know the standards will set for her, and then we can have variations too. Okay, and then there's also the delays, and then the high expectations from our Food and Drug Authority or standards authorities. Competition with imported products, you go through the drudgery, you go through the costs, and you have to compete with a product that has been imported into the country. And it is not that easy for the rural women. And then the limited access to information. Yes, so collaboration is key because we have to complement the efforts with the various agencies. And then we also need to improve on productivity. If raw material base is not cheap, you are starting already on a wrong note. So that is one area. Subsidy, yes, but there are issues with some of them. And then the R&D, we need to do the proper cost-benefit analysis before we venture into value addition. Sometimes we do things and we think it will be picked, but we need to do the cost-benefit analysis very well. And then they need to review the certification process. There's also exposure. You send rural women to places with near best practice for them to learn and also apply. And then we need the policies. We have some, but we need a strong one, especially for us to consume from our own production. I keep citing the example of Rwanda, where they consume 80% of their own production. And when you look at us, it is nowhere near. We have to take pride in consuming what we produce. And we'll get very close. These are some photos on the value addition. And I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Adi. We are now moving to our next section, which is section 3.
So I promise I will allow you to ask a few questions. We have had 4 presentations, and the first one was on climate variability and climate change by Dr. AKUAFO. He gave us evidence of climate change that climate change is actually real. We hear of heat waves in Europe these days. It's a general.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Ma question va à la dernière présentatrice, Madame Paulina, qui a fait une très bonne présentation. Nous savons tous que la qualité alimentaire aujourd'hui concerne tout le monde, y compris la gestion des déchets. Et c'est l'aspect qui a retenu mon attention.
The quality of our food it concerns everyone, and that the side that I want to talk about.
Donc je voulais demander à Madame Paulina, Michel a pris l'exemple du manioc. Comment se gère par exemple les pots de manioc au Ghana?
Ok. Merci beaucoup. Au Ghana.
And then the other option, we are now drying the cassava peel. We have a whole gasification plant. So we are stocking with the cassava peel to provide energy. So we can use to roast the cassava into gari. So we are not cutting trees to use for firewood, but we are using the peel to provide the energy. And then the other one for livestock.
Au lieu de couper les arbres, nous utilisons cela pour briser et pour transformer le cassava en gari.
Peel, because cassava are you have the fact that the second peel usually is mainly introduced in Cameroon presently in food, human food, but we are. We have some problem concerning because in varieties, cassava varieties concerning sanates, the fact is that the concentration of sanite is higher so the problem presently, we are trying to see whether they have to evaluate the risk and see how to reduce it and new treatment to apply to reduce it. But using it, the second thing is for human food is growing.
But in Ghana, for our big cassava processing factory, they were deriving starch. And the peeling, you don't get everything off. But that starch was native starch, which was not so much for the food application. So for native starch, it will go for textile and related, but not so much for the food applications. Thank you very much. I would want to say that under the Root and Tuber Improvement and Marketing Program, which was run by the ministry, it was an IFAD-sponsored program. We had what we called good practice centers for cassava processing. And it's a center for women, and then a center which should be available for others to come and learn. So it was a model center for replication in other locations. And that formed the hub. Traders were coming to pick, and then the producers were also feeding with the raw material. So with that, it was able to form a kind of network between processors, the producers, and then the traders. So when they had a kind of small umbrella body, if one processing center needs raw material, they can just call, and then the raw material comes. If a trader needs, they have an idea of the volumes that have been produced at this center. So I think that is a good model to replicate because it had all the good practices centered around it. So we can look at that again. The project is over, but the activities are going on in some of these places.
Thank you. I think we are far behind time, so we'll have to bring this session to a close. Let's give a hand.
Before I invite Prof. Obudai and Dr. Frifa to chair the next session, I know Comfort has not spoken to anyone today, apart from those that you know. Sabina from South Africa, have you gotten anybody's contact today? Yeah. Juma, have you gotten anybody's contact today? I'm giving you 5 minutes maximum. Try and get the link up right now, talk to him or her. They might have a project that you guys will work together. Mama, have you got somebody today? No. Tina.
Sumunyami, 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 Sumunyami,
AKUAFO TV den samana ba munte aya muntia sam foto samana ya de abramu amunte aya muntia sam agriculture samana babo mayi na munte aya muntia sam foto samana agriculture munte aya muntia sam ya de abo agriculture samana ya de abo AKUAFO